Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello, welcome to Popternative. This is the podcast and talk show where we have digital discussions, worlds of TV, film, news, pop culture, everything really, depending on the guest, talk about it all. As always, I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis. On social media, you know me as PD Beats. My guest is a composer. You're going to be able to hear her score for Netflix's new show, Jupiter's Legacy, dropping Friday, May 7th. Stephanie Economou is with us. Stephanie, welcome to Popternative.
Thank you, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here.
I mean, it's calm before the storm. The show's going to drop. People are going to hear it. What's going through your mind right now, the calm before the storm a little bit?
Yeah, the anticipation is growing by the moment. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for this to come out. I was working on the score for this for almost a year, probably around 8 months, and then it's just it was a wild ride. And I really the show is doing something different, and I think it's really kind of a family drama, but they happen to be superheroes, so it sort of explores the relationships between relationships with your parents or your children or your siblings, or just like those closest to you. And I think that's a unique spin to have on the superhero narrative.
Oh, 100%. And we all know how big comic book culture and geek culture is. I feel like every year it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So when you were kind of approaching this project, you were doing the score for Jupiter's Legacy, I mean, was one of the first things that come to mind is like, and I'm just curious, like, wow, like this is big, this has to sound big. Did that ever come to mind, like the scale of it?
Definitely the scale was on my mind. The show itself, it's just the scope and the scale of it is crazy, right?
Yeah.
So we have so many of these intimate family, like interpersonal moments, and then we have these huge battle sequences, or
Mhm.
like we're hopping time periods. So it's like we're moving around the world, and it just had this huge journey element to it, which I was well aware of going in, and I wanted to make sure that it was of utmost importance that the music was able to kind of expand and contract within these storylines
Yeah.
depending on kind of where we were.
Absolutely. So for you, kind of going a little bit backwards a little bit, like film composing and making music and scores, I just want to know, I mean, for your background, did you come from music? Was that mindset like you always want to, compose scores? Did you want to just work in film? And it brought like, when did that come to be for you?
Yeah, music's always been a really big part of my life. I started playing piano when I was about 6, and then violin I started on when I was 7 or 8. So I kind of grew up just like playing in ensembles, and in high school I started writing music. So I was just like, writing piano pieces, or like string orchestra pieces or string quartets. And it wasn't until like, I really had to start thinking about college that I was like, do I want to do this professionally? And I was like, you know what? If I even have the thought, I should just like go balls to the wall and just like go to a conservatory and just see if I sink or swim, kind of like see how I feel about it. That way I won't be left guessing, or I'll always wonder if I didn't try it, I always wonder. So I went to a conservatory, and I was mainly writing concert music still there,
Yeah.
but I had some buddies from high school who were directors, and they were making these short films, and they were like, "Hey, would you want to take a stab at scoring them?" And I was like, "I have no idea what the hell I'm doing, but sure." I've always loved film and TV my whole life, so it just felt like a natural kind of thing to explore creatively. And I love the process. I loved the collaborative experience. I loved having someone else be able to listen to my music and be like, "No, try this totally other random thing that you wouldn't have tried,"
For sure.
because it
You could
just
take
totally
risks. You
opened
could
the
take
box.
risks a little bit. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and like, writing concert music, I felt like I was only limited to like the boundaries that I had set for myself, and I was really struggling to kind of break out of that, and like, what do I do to experiment more? So having these other people come in and just sort of be like, try this, like push it in this direction. That was great. So I moved out to LA, and I started working with this composer named Harry Gregson Williams, who's known for like Shrek and Narnia, and just a ton of different things, The Martian, Mulan. And I worked with him for 6 years. So that's how I kind of just sort of learned the ropes and started writing on films and TV series. And yeah, I've been doing my own projects for a long time now too. So that's kind
Amazing.
of how it went.
No, absolutely. And I do have specific Jupiter Legacy questions. But before this, I did tell you before we started that you're like the first composer on Popternative. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's a big deal for us. So I'm excited for this question because I sometimes ask my guests, about, because I always like giving my viewers and my listeners kind of like a behind the scenes kind of feel of things, and I always ask them about kind of misconceptions because everyone thinks they know everything about the life of people like working on projects, right? So I need to know. I'm really excited for this because I personally want to know
Yeah.
what are some misconceptions that you could tell us about being a composer, like things that like, oh, it's like this, right, Stephanie? You're like, nope, it's the complete opposite. Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think people really over romanticize music, or they just don't even realize it's there or realize what goes into making it. Composers are generally one of the last people that are hired on a team, like in post
See, I
production.
did not
Not
know that.
not always. I mean, sometimes they're hired in pre-production and like the director wants you to write music and then they play it on the set, like, they did for Joker. But more often than not, like you're hired like right around when post starts. And the schedules are wild usually, depending on the project you're on. But it's like, for example, I'll give you an example for Jupiter's Legacy. I did have like a good chunk of time to do that series, but at the same time, sometimes you get towards the end of a schedule, like this season has 8 episodes. By the time I got to episode 7, there was 55 minutes or 55 minutes was the duration of the episode, and it had 52 minutes of score. And I had about 12 days to do the whole thing, like from start to finish.
Yeah.
So it is no joke. Like, it is so demanding and just like creatively draining. And then, a lot of the time it's like sometimes you end up unfortunately on a project where you can't be super creative. Like maybe they wanted to hire another composer, so you feel like you're stuck writing in the style of another composer because they couldn't get them.
I did not think of any of these. This is so interesting.
Yeah, or like sometimes what they do for TV shows and films is when they're editing it, they put a temp track up to it. They put temp music in there from pre-existing scores because it's good to edit to, and that's like a good thing to have in there. Not every person does that, but they usually when I sit down and we like watch it down for the first time, there's music in there that the editor has thrown in. And sometimes a director or producer can get really attached to that piece of music because they've been listening to it for so long. And then you're the composer and you're meant to replace all of this music. And then they got attached to it. And then it's like, okay, well, you guys can't license that because it's too expensive.
Wow.
Like yeah.
Man, I didn't think of that at all. That is really interesting.
Yeah.
Like it makes sense now that you said it, but like I did not think of that. That's crazy.
Yeah, and also I'd say the last thing that's the biggest misconception is that like I think people idolize a lot of these big oftentimes white male composers in this industry who do so much work, so many shows and films at the same time. I think people forget that like they have huge teams of people working for them.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Not talked about enough. It's really just kind of like the head composer can sometimes become just like a producer type and just like,
he's like the face and then everyone else gets, absolutely.
The figurehead. Yeah. And for some reason it's like that in so many other fields, like you have assistant editors and you have so many other people, you have assistant directors. But composers aren't unionized. So there's like no checks and balances there. So, lots of composers just have teams and teams of people that they don't offer great credit to or any of that stuff. So it can be a somewhat dark landscape for the industry, but that's definitely something that I think people forget in music, that it's not just like this one genius person churning out, 20 minutes of music a day. That's just like brilliant. It's like, no, it's,
but then
it's very
naturally,
much
like there's like a hierarchy that all of a sudden appears, right?
Exactly. And there's some people who are more transparent about it, like Hans Zimmer, who has like the same kind of roster of people, but he gives great transparency to their roles with the directors in the studios. But there are lots of other people that just kind of keep their team hidden in the shadows, and I think that's really problematic.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
You complete the score for Jupiter's Legacy. It's done. You know what I mean? It's ready to go. What's the mindset like when you're finished a score? Is it kind of like, I want to take a break, or is it like, give me the next project? Like, what happens to you after you finish the score?
After Jupiter, I was like, I want to go to Hawaii for 3 months, but that wasn't.
So it's case by case, right? Depending on each one. Yeah.
It's case by case. I usually would love to just have a breather, even a week, just to like, not stare at a screen and make music and do all that stuff. But to be honest, like schedules are never neat and tidy like that. You're always either like balancing something else at the same time or like have to jump into something right away. So I was lucky to have had a little bit of time after Jupiter before I moved on into something else. But I would love to take that time, just like a little vacation, but it never works out that way.
No, it does not. Were there some things that you were able to do with the score for Jupiter's Legacy that like when you kind of signed on for the project, you kind of made it like as much as you, because it's funny, you bring up like like what people want and like ideas and stuff, but like were there some things that you were able to kind of put in the score that you wanted to put in the score?
Yeah, definitely. I think Jupiter's Legacy has been the most rewarding collaboration I've had thus far in my career. The showrunner and the producers really respected my vision for the music from the very beginning. So, like, by the time they brought me on board and hired me, they had like really solid cuts of all 8 episodes. So we were able to sit down and have a spotting session where we listened to the temp music, and then we talked about, what direction we wanted the score to go in. And they wanted it to feel like a long feature film. They didn't want it to feel like an episodic series. So what I was able to do because of that, I had the luxury of seeing all of these storylines unfold and the pace at which they were doing so. I was able to make some musical decisions very early on that sometimes you're not able to make. So there's episode 7 is a big epic episode. I'm so excited for people to see it. But there was one moment in particular, and I won't describe the moment, but it was an incredible scene, and I just felt that it demanded something really bold musically. So before I had even written a note of music, I had sold the producers on this idea in episode 7, like, I'm going to write this big choir piece that's going to use the main theme of the show, which is Sheldon's theme. And it's going to be this like big majestic moment, but also a little bit bizarre. And I was just like, this feels right for this moment. They were really excited by it. And because I knew I was heading to this musical thing in episode 7, I was like, well, why don't I make vocals part of the tapestry of the score leading up to that? So it feels really earned by the time we get there.
Mhm.
So I had these conceptual decisions that I had kind of created along the way. About, because of these things that we talked about so early on. And that choir moment was I'm really proud of that piece, because it just feels like kind of the pinnacle scene of the season. And I got like all these singers to sing on it, all remotely recording because of COVID, so they weren't even in the same space, which is kind of nuts. And I realized these people have to sing on something, like on words, there has to be some sort of lyrics. So I thought, why not go back to the original comic series by Mark Millar? And I kind of dove through those, and I pulled out some of his words and translated it into Latin because there were Latin vocals in there. And those are the words that the choir is singing on. So it became like a special thing to be able to incorporate Mark Millar's words in the choir.
Absolutely. Are people ready for how big this show is? No, but I'm just talking. It's
I
funny.
don't know, Pete.
No, but the thing is, it's like I say big, like, yeah, it looks big, but like people are gonna watch it. Like it's impactful. Like the stuff that's in this show is gonna like hit you really hard. Like Utopia coming in hard. Like it's big scale, right?
It definitely is, and you're a great hype man, because
Thank you.
it's yeah, I mean, it really does feel like a special show, and it has so much going, like, there's so much in it, and there's
Mhm.
definitely something in it for everyone, which is a really hackneyed thing to say, but I do think that, like, the intimate moments are so convincing, and, like, you really feel them. It's very emotional,
Mhm.
and then the big epic stuff is so well done. It's
It
just, like,
is.
it feels so, so awesome. So
And the thing, yeah, it feels so good, and it's also like we need and we crave like we like the visual, also like tag teams with like the music and a lot of these things too, right? Like that's been. Have you noticed the focal point for like a lot of like comic book superhero stuff? Like people are talking about the music more and more. Have you noticed that a little bit?
I'm not sure. I kind of like approaching the superhero narrative. I was in a little bit of a vacuum. Like I didn't want to think about what other superhero stuff had done,
Yeah.
what it was doing, like what the relationships were. I was sort of just wanted to be inspired by Jupiter's Legacy. But, obviously I've seen my fair share of superhero films and shows. So I do know that that stuff really needs to be super intertwined, the music and the visuals, in order to make it convincing and like have the audience feel those emotions. It really is critical.
Absolutely. Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on Popternative. I really appreciate you coming on and taking some time.
Thank you, Pete. This was a pleasure.
So yeah, they're gonna be able to see it May 7th. It's gonna drop. They're gonna be able to watch the show. They're gonna be able to enjoy your score. It's all gonna be great, and everyone's excited for it. No, I'm here for you. I'm the hype man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Is that a bazooka? That's not a bazooki in the background, eh?
No, that's actually a mandolin.
Okay.
No, because I do have a friend who has a bazooki, so I have a bazooki.
That's
guy
the
when
thing. I haven't seen a bazooki in a long time, so I'm
Yeah.
not like I don't remember exactly what it looks like or how wide
It's similar.
it is.
It's similar in shape.
Okay, so
And it's
I'm not crazy
no, no,
off.
no,
Okay.
no, no. And I also have it's so funny. I have a cousin who like toured Greece, playing bouzouki, like for years and years.
My dad was in like Greek bands growing up. I played drums in Greek
Really?
bands.
That's
Yeah. Oh
awesome.
yeah. My dad, he did. So I know all about that. And there's like
That's
these
so cool.
drums that have Greek names that you don't
Yeah.
realize. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy. We're gonna
It
be.
is.
Is there any social media people can follow you on? Like keep updated with
Yeah.
everything.
I'm on the medias. I like Instagram, Twitter. Actually, those are kind of the main ones.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not good at socializing on those platforms, but I do just sort of
I think you're gonna get
keep
busy
up with
once the
news.
show drops.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's just my name. My handle is just Steph Economou, for Twitter and Instagram.
Amazing.
So that's where my online identity lives. And yeah.
Amazing. Well, this has been Popternative. YouTube.com/Popternative. For previous episodes, Jupiter's Legacy is going to drop May 7th on Netflix, and that's where you're going to be able to hear Stephanie's amazing score for this series. Until next time, this is Stephanie Economou and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.